We all have these crazy thoughts in our minds, and our imaginations just are really a place where everything just stores. And to release it, you go to a horror film and you see it happening to people up on the screen, and you know that it's not real, so it's okay. And you also want to have your blood, you want to be stimulated a little bit. You want to get that rush, and you want to be frightened. Well, it's a horror film, so there will be blood. There will be blood. Okay. Well, the character I play is the character called William, and he fits in to this story by the way in which first of all, his wife is suffering from dementia, and she's like, losing her mind, and they're actually, she's doesn't have much of a quality of life. She's lost her ability to walk, and things are in and out in her mind, and it really, sometimes when you lose your quality of life, it's really nothing left. But William is there for her. He loves her. He wants the best for her. But he also struggles because he suffers, because when she goes through these emotions, there's nothing he can do.
My character's name is Peter Spencer. He and his wife, Nina, have a husband and wife real estate company, Over the River Real Estate, and they are selling a house on 44 Rayburn Drive. And this house has some pain inside of it. With the help of the genre, we were telling a story that just is not being told in movies today. So it felt fresh. It's scary, and that's what you signed on for. You know what I'm saying? Like, what if you could get off the roller coaster at the top, or pause it for a second to gird yourself? The fun is that it's going and going and going, and you know the crest is coming, and then after the crest, you're going to be screaming. And I think that's what the movie theater experience is.
I read the script, made the mistake of reading the script late at night when my husband was away. And I was so frightened I couldn't sleep that night. And I rang my agent next day and said, I can't do this, it's too frightening. And she said, well, that means it's good. Poor Faith is deluded, and she's having delusions, and she's seeing ghosts that other people aren't seeing, and that we probably will. I can't believe anyone will see this film without being scared witless. I can't believe they possibly could be. And I think a lot's going to, the way it's going to be cut, edited, will no doubt enhance that. And because Nick is such a good storyteller, I think it's going to be terrifying.
This is the scariest script I've ever read, for real. And I read it over and over because I had a fair amount of time with it, which for me is really heavenly, because I feel like I do my best work in my unconscious when I'm waking up and going to sleep and have time to mull over thoughts and sort of inspiration, if you pardon the expression, sort of occurs at those times. And when I read this, I love the premise of what The Grudge is. I mean, it's about rage. I think I always look for the big idea in a story in general, and I think this has a really powerful idea that rage destroys people and destroys them forever. I've never been a part of something that had this much, that had any kind of gore to it like this. And I mean, the films that people are, you know, I've been in horror films, but in my mind, they were all stories. This is a horror film. This is real horror. I think this is going to be a really scary movie. I think seeing the movie is going to be scary, because if I can lose myself enough and to really have the impact of what he's creating, I think he's really doing something that's going to be somewhat profound within the genre itself, which is just horror fun in a way. But this movie's not fun. There's something else that's lurks in here that I think people will take home with them. And I probably will take an aspect of it home too.
It's more for an adult audience. It's R-rated versus the previous Grudge PG-13 rating, and it really pushes the audience. You've got to pay attention to what's happening. The Grudge is based on a Japanese curse, and really it's the belief that when someone dies in the grip of a terrible rage, they leave behind this energy, this darkness, or this grudge, this unanswered desire for vengeance and violence. And that's really the curse that our movie is based upon. The picture itself is put together like a marvelous, intricate puzzle for the audience to figure out. So it's really challenging for the audience in a way that the films that I started with were not.
Nick Pesh, the director of The Grudge, is a big fan of the Japanese films and the world of The Grudge in general. And he and Sam Raimi and the producer Good Universe had an idea for how to make bring The Grudge back, but with a completely new story that still pays homage to the themes of the Japanese stories and some of the underlying ideas of The Grudge, but brings a whole new take on it. What we were going for in the movie is, I think, what we are going for with every single character, and that's that you come into this movie with these people that feel so real and so sympathetic, and you see right away the kind of challenges they're facing in their day-to-day life, relatable things that happen to all of us and to our loved ones. And you instantly care about these people and their struggles, so that when they encounter the even bigger terror, the grudge, this horrible supernatural thing that overtakes them, it just gets us that much more. This is not just happening to a bunch of characters running around in a horror movie. This is happening to very real, very sympathetic people who we, in a short time, have invested so much in what we think are their day-to-day struggles before those struggles get blown away by this supernatural horror. I think, like any good horror movie, there are moments in this movie that are going to come out of nowhere and make you jump out of your seat. But I think they're even more powerful are the parts that are going to work their way into your brain and stay with you long after the movie is done. And I think that's the brilliance of what Nick has created here. It's a world that's as scary and as many frights as any classic horror movie, but underlying it all is this unbelievably disturbing story, a disturbing filmmaking style that just leaves your skin crawling for days.
What's great about this film and what I think makes it a little different is the emotional aspect of this film is just so beautiful, and it's so grounded in stories, all of these little stories that everyone can have such an understanding to, I think, and in some way relate to them. So it's not just a horror film, even though it is a horror film. There's a whole psychological aspect to it that I think people that maybe don't think they would like this genre, they're going to want to see this, or they should. I hope when people see this movie that they will have been scared and gone on an emotional journey, which I think that they will, because I just think that this movie is so layered. It's beautifully written, and I hope that they can kind of understand why everyone does everything and be touched by it, and then be absolutely horrified at the same time. I feel like the more raw that people are in the theater and emotional in this film, the more scared they're going to be too, because their emotions are going to be like all over the place.
There are 4 different stories within this script, and each one has kind of a slightly different visual thread that runs through it, and it's an interesting challenge to have them each be different but have them all exist within the same world. So it's really fun to get a script like that jumps back and forth, because you know that you're going to get to do a lot of different stuff. In a thriller, horror genre type movie, the really fun thing about picking the camera moves and the camera angles, I think, is trying to be propulsive and trying to sort of really selectively show the viewer what to be looking at and what to be feeling without feeling the camera and taking them out of it. So if you can sort of it's almost like sleight of hand, I feel like if the viewer doesn't realize that something's about to come out from around the corner, and then it does, then I feel like successfully achieved something. So if you don't show your hand too soon, I mean, it works really well for a movie that's supposed to be scary. Nick is really collaborative and is not afraid to hear ideas from other people. He's not afraid to try out stuff that might be better, might be worse, but he's really good at taking the sort of work, delegating, and then taking the good work of everybody and sort of elevating it and making it comprehensive and seeing the bigger picture he's very strong.
Sam had wanted to make an R-rated version of The Grudge for a long time, and this is its incarnation. So as an audience, you, in a sense, are learning about The Grudge through my character from beginning to end. I play a character called Muldoon. She's a detective. She's a hardened detective. She's a young woman, but has investigated homicide. She's seen a lot of stuff. She's gone through her own personal grief, a large grief in her own life. She has a kid. There's a lot of domesticity and sort of mundaneness about the set when we sort of initially come to the movie, which is really interesting because I think it makes everybody feel like they could sit on that sofa, stand in that bedroom, be scared in that same hall. There's something very gritty and real about the way that Nick's made the film that I think it's just going to be utterly terrifying. I think the reason why The Grudge will be so scary is because it is so rooted in family. And, you know, it explores some of what I'd imagine are humans, certainly my darkest fears.
The fact that it's an R rating, which I guess is a first for the franchise, I didn't know that till today. But it's that much gorier, scarier, and I think what the franchise really deserves is to have the story told that terrifyingly, because it's terrifying. Sam Raimi's a genius, and I think having his name attached to this and his brain attached to this is such a testament to what a really good film it is. I think it's easy to get kind of schlocky and campy and cheesy in horror, and he is such an auteur and so, you know, always takes it so seriously. And I think what Nick Pesh brings to this is that, you know, I think because it's under the horror theme, that he's allowed to tell these stories that otherwise maybe wouldn't be told now. I think that the dramatic performances that he gets out of all the actors are pretty incredible. I mostly worked with John Cho. He plays my husband, and I love John Cho so much. It was such a strange experience, like forging a nice friendship with someone and be like, action. But it really feels like, you know, true to the franchise, the Grudge franchise. It's different storylines woven together, and so we filmed for 2 weeks, and then the next group of people came for 2 weeks, and then the next group. So we kind of, he sort of made 3 movies and braided them together, and I'm so interested to see what the other 2 movies are like, because I feel like we made our little short movie. And Andrea Riseborough, who I didn't work with but met today for the first time, and I'm such a fan of her, and I'm so excited to see what everyone else did.
Sam Raimi is one of our masters of horror. He understands what fear is. He understands how to express it visually and auditorily, if that's a word, to scare the pants off of you. The Grudge is a perfect thing for the movies because it's experiencing horror in a collective atmosphere with people who each have their own experience with fear and horror. And yet in a movie theater in particular, we're all watching the same thing, and it's affecting all of us in a personal way, in a public way. And I think that there's nothing more exciting than being scared in public and be safe. Then you get to go home to your own, hopefully warm little bed. This film definitely requires audience participation. It's not just a screen film. It's about thinking about where the Grudge is moving, how it's affecting different families, how the families are affecting each other's overall experience in terms of what they're presenting to you, the audience. It's basically a family movie. It's about, in some very bizarre way. And I think there's lots of puzzle moments that you have to put together. It requires a little bit of work, and I mean that in the most entertaining sense for the audience. You need to see this in the theater.
The R rating afforded us the opportunity to go bigger, louder, gorier with the scares, but also allowed us to be more intense with the subject matter outside of the scares. So, you know, the R rating just kind of gives us the freedom to do not whatever we want, but a wider breadth of possibilities and kind of raise the octane level of the movie. The nature of the film is that, of all the old movies, is that it affects families, and it's always been very family driven. And now we're in like a climate of horror where audiences are like hungry and love family drama infused horror movies. And I think that for the first time, we were able to like dedicate a lot more of the movie to the character driven side of it, because audiences love that. And I think that, you know, the nature of the franchise is that it's an anthology. So every movie is different story, different characters, different place. And in this world where like everything is being remade, we're not bound to remaking or sequelizing anything. It can be a standalone, its own thing that's just a new chapter in this canon. The movie obviously started in Japan, and the mythology is based on the Onryo myth, which is a Japanese folklore story about a woman who is killed, and she haunts the people who live in her house. And the movies have traditionally been very Japan-centric, but the cool thing about The Grudge is it's not like a localized thing. This grudge can spread anywhere and everywhere. And so much of this movie is about the fact that, yes, it's happening in Japan, but it's also happening here, and it's also probably happening in tons of other places. So while the one that you know of started in Japan, they're everywhere. And this one in particular was in fact brought from Japan. And for those fans who are wondering if they'll see Kayako, they just might.
This is more like a psychological type of terror that you end up seeing creatures, and you end up seeing dead people, you know, walking around, giving you a hard time, and that plays with your mind in such a way that it can drive you nuts, can drive you crazy. And so when I read that, I thought it was very intense and very, very scary. This is a complete different entity. This is fully charged with its own personality and its own beauty and its own terror. They will witness how the characters in this film will be losing their minds little by little, and you don't have that chance in real life. You don't have that chance, that opportunity to see that happening in real time, not even in your own home, you know, with your own family. So when they see that in 2 hours only, it's like that's what it's gonna raise their heartbeats, because they know what's happening and we don't.